Well, thanks everyone for joining today. Just a little bit of background. So, some of you may or may not know that this presentation today falls under this kind of new programming that we're doing, and we're calling it continuing education, which is something that's existed in the social work world for many, many years. And it's something we've done um, a little bit with our mentors. And the idea is to provide opportunities for our volunteers to really sharpen up some new skills, focus on new ideas, and come together to think through just kind of topics that are relevant to our volunteering to be able to put us in a position to best support others, our community, and everyone who may be impacted by ALS. So, this is part of our continuing education programming, and it's something that we're going to be looking to expand and kind of build upon in the months and years to come. So I appreciate everyone joining. We're gonna start off, and you can go to the next slide there, Julie. Just with a little bit of a quick kind of grounding guided meditation. And for folks, certainly you can turn your camera off if you'd prefer. I think this one is about just under a minute or so. But I think it's important always to kind of check in with yourself, especially to give yourself a little bit of time just to process through things. And I think kind of given all of the advocacy that we're doing lately, it is always important to take even just a minute or so to process through and center yourself. So you can go ahead and play it there.
Hi, and welcome to Headspace. So, no matter what's going on in your life right now, no matter how many thoughts are racing around your mind, no matter how the body's feeling, just take a moment to sit down and take a big, deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, a sense of taking in fresh air, the lungs expanding. As you breathe out, a sense of letting go of any stress in the body, in the mind, just feeling the muscles soften and relax. And close your eyes if you'd like to. One more. Breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. Then just take a moment to pause. Allow the thoughts to come and go. And then just gently opening the eyes again.
Thanks for participating in that. There's a few meditation apps there, and I really love Headspace. A, because I'll be honest, I find this gentleman to have a very soothing voice. But they have a lot of very situational
Mm.
kind of programming. So we'll have stuff about like um, the title will literally be like anxious and going on a walk, and you can like put it on, and it's like great for if you're feeling anxious and are going outside or going on a walk. So they have a lot of really good programming, and they have a free version of most of them as well, so it's a good way to get access to them. I know I touched a little bit kind of on this continuing education program, so this is just building upon that a little bit. We really just wanted to create a space to give volunteers of all kind of participations, whether it's on our mentor side, our community team side, an opportunity to come together and really discuss some skills that are relevant to the range of work that we're doing. And here are just some of the key skills that we're hoping to achieve through this session, and then the ones that we're going to be doing in the future as well. And if folks ever have any ideas or topics they might want to touch on, the one we did previously was on integrating self-care into your volunteering. Today is obviously on advocacy, but we're always open to exploring some new ways just to make sure that the volunteering and support you're doing at I AM ALS is meeting the needs and that we're continuing to grow things.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. So we're going to talk about both lots of different kinds of advocacy. And part of the work that the community organizing side does is really focused on larger scale level advocacy, which we're going to go into in a little bit. But The community organizing team at I AM ALS is really focused on bringing people together and giving people a platform to talk about the things that are important to them. And when I tell people I'm a community organizer, I get lots of different responses, including people who think that I like organize closets and refrigerators and things like that. But actually, community organizing is a really thoughtful process. And at I AM ALS, the ethos of it is really to think about how we can create that platform that's accessible to everybody in our community. And so in every single one of our community teams, whether it's the Lou Gehrig Day team or the legislative affairs team, or the clinical trials team, we really try and keep the goals in mind to grow and sustain the ALS movement. So to continue to keep bringing people into the movement, regardless of their association with ALS, to raise ALS awareness both in the medical sphere, but in the general public as well. And importantly, to add to that is to raise ALS competency. So to make sure that people understand ALS and the experience of living with ALS, to improve the ALS therapy pipeline. So making sure that there's continual support for drug development and access to those drugs, and improve quality of life for people living with ALS and impacted by ALS. So caregivers, family members, friends, people living with ALS, really just sort of always having that front of mind is a big component of every single one of the community teams, that the work that they do. The other things that the community teams really focus on are specific ways to bring people together. So one way we do that is we host events like this one, where we bring people together mostly virtually, although Rod can attest to the Lou Gehrig Day celebrations, which are something that happened on Lou Gehrig Day in June, at ballparks across the country. We also have our community summit that happens in May, but for the most part, a lot of our events are virtual. So we use that as an opportunity to bring people together, share information, raise awareness, and build that sort of community platform. And so one of the other ways we do that, and a lot of the community teams host events, is through the work of the individual community teams. And our community teams are really sort of the center of the community organizing side of I AM ALS. And so all of our community teams are self-organized, so they were created by the community, and they're led by community members. So our co-chairs who kind of take the lead in making sure that we have agendas and that the work of the team kind of stays on track, are all 100% volunteers. And so they're really focused on, again, sort of these main tenets of raising awareness, making treatments and cures a reality and access to those, and improving the quality of life for people living with ALS. So that's kind of threaded throughout all of the programming that we do, and in a lot of ways threaded through all of the advocacy opportunities that we have at I AM ALS. And these are the different teams that we have. So some of you are members of these teams and some of you are not. And so these, if you go to our website, we have individual team pages that kind of go into a little bit more detail about these teams and the work that they do. And so the most, I'd say, probably important way to think about this in terms of with the lens of advocacy is that all of these teams have different forms of advocacy involved in them. Advocacy is a loaded term. We're going to talk about it. And so, it's not just legislative advocacy. There's, self-advocacy that Patrick's going to talk about. There's awareness advocacy. There's lots of different ways, and each of these teams, in their own way, has opportunities to become an advocate. Pass it over to you, Patrick.
Thank you. So, to touch a little bit on some of our community support programming, here are really the three pillars that we're trying to achieve in the support that we're doing. We have a range of education material that's available on our website. All of this is things that we vet to make sure it's updated and as accurate as possible. We have recorded educational series In addition to that, we have a few different programs that I'll touch a little bit more in greater detail. We have a peer mentor program that allows to folks to become trained mentors to provide one-on-one support to other individuals. We have a peer support specialist program that facilitates training for about 20 hours or so, and then kind of works alongside our support specialists and social work team to provide support to those in the community. We have a range of different support groups for folks living with ALS as well as caregivers and loved ones. And then we also can provide one-on-one support kind of through a case management model where we can work on a one-on-one basis with folks, providing information, resources, things of that nature in a way to provide as many pieces of relevant information that we can to ensure that folks are getting the support that they need. Here is just a little bit of a snapshot of those support groups. Um, so most of them meet monthly. Our Tuesday group is a weekly group, which is for people living with ALS. That one meets weekly, and then the rest are meeting throughout the month. In addition to that, we have a group that's called the ALS Comedy Crew. That meets weekly, but in 4-week modules. That group is for folks living with ALS, and is a technically under our support group umbrella, but is a really fun time and kind of brings together comedy activities, storytelling, all of that over the course of 6 weeks. And here's just building off of our peer support kind of initiatives. Um, our next slide will break down some of the differences between them, but they are really just special and unique programs. They're the only programming in the ALS world that provides these peer support opportunities. They're obviously available for folks who want to become a peer mentor or a peer specialist to provide that support to others. But they're also available for folks who are seeking that support. So you can apply to become a peer mentee, be matched with a peer mentor who's undergone some training and has a shared connection to the disease. And then we'll kind of foster that connection. And then the relationship can develop over time, and that individual can get that support that they need. Here's that breakdown between becoming a peer mentor or a peer specialist. Obviously, the big thing is going to be a training differential, but in addition to that, the scope of the support that you provide is a little bit different. So our peer mentors, they have a 2-hour training that we run on a monthly basis, and it's really about providing a connection and a community to that individual that you're matched with. It's almost as if there's kind of like a supportive kinship there. So folks oftentimes will have weekly calls or text conversations, emails, things of that nature. And it really is just a space for that mentor to be able to provide some support to that individual and really hopefully increase feelings of hope and decrease social isolation that can come with an ALS diagnosis. Our peer specialists work directly with our with our support specialists, that is. So the training component there is going to be much different. So there's 20-hour trainings, usually over the course of about 10 weeks or so. And they are providing one-on-one case management support to individuals impacted by ALS, providing resources, information, links to other partner organizations that might be able to provide support and facilitate those services. And then in addition to that, there is a weekly supervision with our support team. So folks can kind of come together, discuss ways that they're providing support, and learn about new resources and other things that might be able to provide assistance to folks.
This is you still, Patrick, right?
It is, yes. Um, So just touching on, and this is going to kind of shape our conversation on advocacy for both ourselves and our greater community. I think this is kind of going back to kind of social work 101, 101, or if anyone's ever taken kind of psychology class or anything like that. But really focusing kind of on the individual as well as our environment around us. And I think it's important to note that both for advocacy for ourselves as well as our community, that we do not grow in isolation, and we are shaped and interconnected to many different systems. So we have our work, our school, our friends, family, neighbors, political systems, social norms, all of that. So all of that is kind of playing a role in how we build ourselves and our community. So I think it's important to know and kind of keep that in mind, because the advocacy that we do for ourselves also has a greater impact as well on these systems that are kind of all interconnected. So advocating for things for yourself can have an impact on our greater community, especially just using some real-time examples, if that's advocating for certain type of medical coverage or family leave, things of all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, that can impact you on a kind of singular level, but it can also impact our greater community. So I think it's always helpful to think about kind of where you are in this picture here, and then how that is interconnected with the many different systems and communities that are out there. And here are just some key things. I think it's really important just to note that building your support community can be something that's fundamental when you're doing advocacy for yourself, but also for your greater community. So, creating a support network can really help provide emotional comfort, assistance, resources, and really just support as you navigate the many different challenges connected to ALS. Obviously, it can help reduce stress, help reduce isolation, and really connect you to individuals who might be able to provide special information, direction, resources, things of that nature to help guide yourself as you navigate some of these things. And now I'm just going to break down the role of advocacy for yourself. Here are some of the key things that you can do to provide that advocacy. So, the first and foremost is be informed. So, having an understanding of your diagnosis or your loved one's diagnosis, potential treatment options, your rights as a patient, keeping detailed medical information and medical records, as well as any type of insurance communication. Just having that information on hand is really a major piece of this puzzle and can help navigate through certain situations. Another part of this is asking questions. So that can be clarifying questions if you don't understand information you're getting, if you need a second opinion about certain information that is being shared. All of that can be really important, just to ensure that you're on the same page as the people who are in your support network or providing you any type of medical or mental health kind of support or services. Communicating clearly is something that is extremely important when advocating for yourself. Being open and honest and transparent with certain informations really can ensure that any type of medical decisions or care options are relayed to you in a way that is important and effective as well. And building off that, something that is extremely important is knowing your rights. And this is something that you can build upon by connecting with care professionals, social workers, social individuals at a clinic, things like that. Some of this information too may not be um, totally easy to access, or sometimes you have to kind of connect to different providers to find this information. But knowing your rights in certain situations can be a really important tool to be able to advocate for yourself. An example I'll use is something that I was providing some support with recently, and an individual was traveling on an airline for the first time following their diagnosis, and they wanted to ensure that when they were traveling at the airport, that they were able to receive assistance, going to the gate, things of that nature. So we were able to find specific rules and regulations that they were able to then utilize when speaking with the customer service liaison and ensure that they got the support that was provided to them while they were at that airport. Support resources can be another extremely important thing. Obviously, leveraging patient advocates, support groups, peers, things of that nature to gain insight on what your potential rights are, certain ways you can navigate a situation. Leveraging the information of others that have experienced similar challenges can provide you many different tools and extremely important insight to be able to utilize if you experience a similar challenge. And lastly, being persistent. I know there's the saying about the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, and I think that can be true when advocating. Sometimes, if there's a situation with a medical provider and an insurance provider, following up multiple times, getting information about specific coverage uh, pieces or benefit information, things like that. Sometimes it does take multiple phone calls or bringing in a patient advocate into that, but oftentimes it can lead to the results that you're trying to achieve there for yourself as well.
Thanks, Patrick. I love quotes. So I use them a lot when talking about advocacy. And so these are sort of two of my favorite when we think about what advocacy is, because lots of people have different ideas about what advocacy is, what it means, what it is, what it isn't. And so we all kind of have different associations with the word, but I think these two quotes kind of center us in understanding that advocacy can mean lots of things, but at its core, it's an exercise in empathy. So trying to find a way to really form a connection is usually whether it's for yourself, for your community, for your country, for whatever it may be. It's always sort of focused on that portion of yourself. And so, what does that connection mean? And when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful is just a reminder that your story is important and that your experience is important and that that is a tool, probably the best tool that advocates have, no matter what setting you're in. So whether it's for individual advocacy or sort of that larger scale advocacy. And so, let's see. Where does advocacy happen? It happens everywhere. So in the social work world, we think of it in sort of micro, meso, and macro. So there's sort of the different levels. So on the individual level, so individual interpersonal relationships, you can advocate for yourself with your family, with your friends, with your medical provider, with, people you interact within the world, sort of on that one-to-one kind of level. And a lot of people will also talk about sort of that medical advocacy. So how can you advocate for yourself with your medical providers or your care team? And a lot of that is like making sure that your needs are met in that relationship and that you're heard and listened to. And then when we move into the community level, it's sort of institutions or groups. So whether it's, the facility that you receive your care at, or a university, a hospital, a care facility, a long-term care facility, or within a group like I AM ALS or the National Association of Social Workers, like sort of those kinds of larger scaled groups. It can also be like your community library could be, an example of an institution. So there's opportunities to advocate in those spaces as well. And then the one that I think a lot of people think of immediately when they hear advocacy is governments and sort of that larger scale advocacy. So whether it's state, local, federal government levels, judicial advocacy in the court system, sort of taking it from that individual level all the way up to sort of the systemic level is ways that there's all different kinds of ways to get involved in advocacy and really about raising your story to the level where it can inflict change. and inspire change. So that's sort of when we think about all the different ways that we can advocate, there's not one way. And so part of what we really try and do at I AM ALS is to remind you that you are an expert in your story. So storytelling is an advocacy tool. And what I mean by that is that there's opportunities for you to sort of, again, sort of use that empathetic lever of trying to incorporate what your experience has been like with people who can either join you in advocating or who are policymakers or in some way, shape, or form have, some sort of lever that they can pull that can help. And so we use it a lot in our advocacy, in our legislative advocacy, but also you can use it in lots of different ways. And I hear a lot from people who are new to advocacy, whether it's legislative advocacy or other forms of advocacy, that you can utilize your story the way that you see fit. So no one can tell you, you are the expert in your story, and getting comfortable sharing your story can be a process. It might not be something you feel comfortable with at first. And it's not something that you have to do if you want to advocate. It's not mandatory. However, it can be a unifying opportunity so that people can really see and understand the experience that you're having and see the connection that it makes to larger issues that they could potentially help address. The other thing I hear from people is that they aren't qualified to advocate, and I think that's one of the biggest barriers that people feel, that I have heard in my experience. And there's no educational requirement to advocate, none at all. You are the expert in your story, and you have the opportunity to advocate at all these different levels. And specifically in the legislative sphere, there's some potential of being intimidated or feeling like you don't know enough about the policy issue, or having a sense of what it means to advocate. And I think there's a strong movement within I AM ALS to really dispel that. And so that's part of what the work that we do really tries to emphasize, is that you as a community member don't need a specific, you know, you don't need letters after your name. You don't need any specific, certificate or something like that to advocate. It's accessible to everyone in a way that we really try and amplify at I AM ALS. And I also want to stress that it does not have to look the same for everyone. It is a spectrum. So there are some people who, can be really involved in legislative advocacy, for example, and they might be going to legislative meetings every day of the week and super involved and plugged in. And that doesn't have to be your jam if you don't want it to be. It really is what your own experience and what your comfort level is. And it can evolve over time as well. So some examples can be sort of, like I said, from that spectrum, like signing up to receive your legislators' newsletters so you can know sort of what they think is important and what they think is happening in their districts, for example. That doesn't mean you have to, sort of do anything more than that, but it can help you sort of build that awareness about what are the things that they think are important, and give you that sense of how they are seeing the issues that are in your community. Another way is getting involved with the patient advocacy work. A lot of hospitals, clinics, even drug companies have patient advocates or patient advocacy committees where they really try and make sure that the patient perspective is represented in the work that they do. And so that's using your story and your voice and your expertise and knowledge to try and help that conversation and provide that for them, and really see you as a resource. So that's another sort of place on that sort of meso level, that in community level, that can really make a difference. And then another one is like something very small such as sharing social media posts about opportunities to advocate. This is something that, again, is, depending on where your comfort level is with advocacy, this might be something that, is a smaller lift, but also something that still is amplifying advocacy and the importance of it. And so I just like to sort of give these different examples. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. It's just sort of some specific ways for people to start thinking about how advocacy can be a part of your ALS journey, but also in a way that makes sense for you. There are many ways to be an advocate. And at I AM ALS, we really want you to pursue the way that makes the most sense for you. And so we provide training and we provide resources for people who are interested in gaining some of the skills for advocacy. But it's really trying to sort of figure out where your comfort level is, and where you want to see yourself as an advocate. And I I love Parks and Recreation, which is a TV show. And Leslie Knope, who's the main character, has this quote. It says, "Now go find your team, get to work. Whatever that work is that you find worth doing, do it and find some people to love who'll do it with you." And I say this, I wanted to put this in here because I think there's also something very fulfilling about doing this kind of work as part of a team. So it can be part of a healing journey. It can be part of finding some sort of connection and purpose that is, maybe not thought of in sort of the traditional terms of support, but it can be something that, can form a connection, all sort of thinking about it in the way that there's more opportunities for you to connect with other people, to interact with different kinds of people in the community, and really, again, to sort of see it as a way for you to learn and grow. And so I will use any opportunity to put a Leslie Knope quote in a presentation, but really wanted to kind of have that perspective on it too, is that even if you do it as part of a group or even if it's solo, it can be an opportunity for you to really find connection and footing in advocacy.
And I'll just build off that a little bit here. I think obviously it can be so important to advocate for things pertaining to your day-to-day life, whether that's coverage for certain things, authorization for certain medical devices, that individual advocacy to get those really, critical pieces of equipment or critical coverage that can really have an immediate benefit on individuals. In addition to that, though, when you're thinking about the advocacy from a greater community perspective, as Julie kind of mentioned there before, advocating for pieces of legislation, policy changes, things of that nature can have that implication of making your life better, but also your community's life better. And then while it's also providing kind of that enhancement along the way, it's providing connection to others, gives you an understanding of what others might be going through or experiences that other individuals might be having. It kind of creates and fosters deeper connections, as well as can provide you with some additional information about maybe benefits or information about other kinds of coverage that you might not have been privy to. So, in addition to that social connection, it really can have a greater community impact as well there.
Awesome. So one of the things that we're very aware of is that there can also be a sense of burnout with advocacy. And so part of what we wanted to do here is just talk about some of the ways that advocacy burnout can not be remedied, but ways that you can make sure that you're taking care of yourself in whatever form of advocacy you choose to pursue. And the first is sort of setting boundaries. And so this could be time boundaries. It could be media consumption boundaries. It could be, different ways of thinking about how you're interacting as an advocate. And also to say that the advocacy journey doesn't have to be linear. There are people who sort of go in and out depending on what is best for them at the time. And I think the other thing to mention here is that in the advocacy world, it can seem like there's so much to do all the time. And so part of what I've seen happen in the past is people sort of sign up for everything because they are so committed to helping in whatever way they can. And then it becomes clear that they need to sort of set some of those boundaries. So I think that's something to, when you go into advocacy, to sort of have that in the back of your mind. And prioritizing self-care. So sort of, again, sort of almost doing that micro individual self-advocacy with yourself, to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do to kind of detach a little bit, or refocus in a way, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Another really important one is celebrating small wins. It's sort of like a layered approach that, lots of little wins can sort of add up to really big wins. So something, for example, in the legislative team that we really celebrate is when someone new joins the ALS caucus. So it doesn't mean that every member of Congress has joined the ALS caucus, but it's one more person. And I don't think of that as a small win. I think of it as a big win, but just as an example of ways that you might hear from an office that you've been trying to get a meeting with for a long time, and that's a win. So making sure that you sort of see that progress, and acknowledge it. And the next one is seek support and reflection. So checking in with people who are close to you, who know what's important to you. So whether that's a peer who you're advocating with, someone who's in a mentor role or a therapist, to really try and give you and help you gain perspective, and sort of see if you're on the road to burnout, is also something that can be really helpful and preventative. And then I alluded to this earlier, but taking breaks and rest. So making sure that you're taking a step back when you need to, making sure that, if things feel, if you're having a hard time sort of keeping up with things, sort of making sure that you are taking care of yourself first. And specifically at I AM ALS, I'll say that, we really follow this, and prioritize it with our community members. And so it's something that's really important. This is the marathon, not a sprint analogy of making sure that we have, sort of a perspective of the long haul, if you will. So these are just some of the ways, and it's not exhaustive, but just some ways that you can think about it, in terms of yourself. And the one thing this Margaret Mead quote is probably everywhere. But I think it sort of is a good way to think about advocacy of, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. And in fact, it's the only thing that ever has. Because I think sometimes there, can be sort of this overwhelming sense of hopelessness, that can, accompany advocacy, whether it's for yourself, or for, a community, or for, within government. And so part of what, we just try and focus on is, the power, of community and the power of connection. And so that is, something that we try and carry through at I AM ALS. And I think, is just, something that I've seen kind of over and over again in the advocacy world. Um, so, um, so yeah, I think that may be it, right, Patrick?
That is it. Yeah. We do have a few minutes left for any questions, whether it is about um, advocacy work directly or ways to be a self-advocate or anything else in terms of some of the services that we provide at I AM ALS. So feel free to come off mute or to use our chat if you have anything you'd like to touch on.
Will a recording of this be distributed since I just got in?
I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
Yvonne.
Thank you.
I have a question. What exactly is, I know, what exactly is the role of the ALS caucus?
Well, that's a great question.
That is a great question.
So the ALS caucus, for just for background for everyone, is caucuses in Congress are there's a gajillion of them, and they're usually by like special interest or, and I don't mean that as like a negative term, but just, people who are interested in legislators that are interested in specific topics. And there's basically a caucus for lots of different things. And so part of what the ALS caucus does is to signal to people's constituents or to other members that those members of Congress support ALS. It is not a requirement to vote a certain way. It doesn't have any sort of binding sort of requirements, I guess. It just sort of signals that as a member of the ALS caucus, you, as a member of Congress, want to support the ALS community. And so what that means in reality is that the chairs of the caucus will send letters signed by other members of the Congress to the whole Congress to talk about appropriations, funding. They will be on the lookout for, especially the chairs of the caucus will be on the lookout for opportunities to talk about ALS. And really what we've seen in the past couple of years is to be champions of ALS research funding. And so it can sort of serve a whole bunch of different purposes. And it doesn't, and for us, the way that we think about it, there are members of Congress who don't join any caucuses, period. And it's not that because they don't support the issue, it's just part of it is like when you join one, you feel like you have to join them all, and it can get a little unwieldy. So it's not necessarily something that is like, a huge red flag. If someone, is not a member of the caucus, we like to use it as an opportunity to have a conversation with members of Congress about the importance of ALS research, funding, access to treatments. So it's sort of like opening the door and creating a relationship with that office and the staff of that office. So we really try and utilize it as like a conversation starter. And there are members of the caucus who are super involved in terms of like, doing dear colleague letters, which is one of those letters that they send to everyone, or, kind of being champions for ALS. And we always really appreciate that. But again, it's sort of more of using it as a lever to create that conversation with an office itself. Yvonne.
I just want to say that no one does it better than I AM ALS. I signed up for them to reach my representatives, and they send me an email and they say, is it okay? And I say, yes, because you can pick, let them go, just send it. And I went to no. And as soon as they sent it out, within a day, I had something from my representative saying, Yvonne, thank you so much. And so I just want to tout that I AM ALS does a great job.
That's
Thank you.
awesome, Yvonne. And in the follow-up email, I'll send the link that people can sign up. We call it signing up to be a constituent, where I AM ALS can contact your representatives, like Yvonne just said, on your behalf. And you can choose whether we can sort of carte blanche do it, or if you want us to be in touch with you before we do it. But it really helps because they work for you. And part of what, by they, I mean your elected officials. And so we try and do our best to make it as easy as possible to make sure that they know how important supporting ALS is to the people that they represent. So thanks so much, Yvonne. That's
Absolutely. I think Juan actually put that on one of our Facebook's page and put all the information up there. So I think it's one of the best kept secrets, and we need to get it out there.
Thanks, Juan.
Thank you,
That's
Juan.
awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Yvonne.
Julia, is there a link to sign up for the constituent
Yeah.
list or program or whatever?
Yeah. I will put it in the chat right now. I'll also put it on in the follow-up email that we send with the recording, but I'll put it in the
Okay.
chat right
Thank you.
now. So you all have it. It says welcome to the I AM ALS legislative team, but you're not signing up for the team. You're just signing up to be a constituent. We would love if everybody signed up for the team, but we know that that's not, everyone's cup of tea.
And on that sign up, you can select if you want to be notified before they send it out. And it's always nice to get that because you know they're working hard for you.
Any other questions or things folks want to touch on?
If you live in one of the 30 Major League Baseball cities, I highly recommend that you join the Lou Gehrig team in your city because those teams are always in transition and fun. I've been a part of Lou Gehrig days now in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cities. So next year I'll add a 6th one. So it's a lot of fun. It's very meaningful. And if you like baseball even just a little bit, it's worth the time and commitment.
Thanks, Rod. Rod, what's city number 6?
Pittsburgh.
Ooh, fun.
Very cool.
Are
So
you
city,
picking that because they're doing?
I'm picking that because I'm a Pirates fan.
Bless
Which
you.
is it's not it's been a long time since the Pirates were good.
Yeah.
Well, you got Paul Skeen, so
That's
hopefully
right.
y'all can build around him.
That's right. That's what I tell people. Wait until 2026 when we have Skeens plus 3 or 4 other young pitchers, and all of a sudden we start winning more games, 1-0.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I'll be joining the Lou Gehrig meeting on Tuesday with you, Rod.
Yeah, we're
Awesome.
having our kickoff meeting. So
Nice.
yeah, that's a great, I just put the team link in the chat. This is for 2025, but you can still find all that information in there. But their kickoff, they took the summer off because Lou Gehrig Day is in June. So they kind of do a lot of work in the spring, and then take some time off in the summer. So that team is ramping up again next week. So it's pretty awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you coming. I'm sorry for the Zoom mix-up. I got some other emails too from folks who weren't able to make it, so hopefully they'll be able to see the recording. But thanks for persevering. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take
Y'all do
care.
the same. Thank you.